In the darkness of the night, on a desolate hill in Brazil, two men never returned. Their deaths contained a strange mystery, an unexplainable trace, and a story that, to this day, remains unsolved. This is the story of the case of the lead masks. The next morning, a search party set out to find out where the two men had gone. The colleagues and families of Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel José Viana were worried when they had not received any news from them. Their trip had shown no signs of anything unusual. But when the search party reached the top of Vintem Hill, a terrifying truth was revealed. One of them, walking along the thick bushes, discovered the bodies of Miguel and Manuel lying on their backs on the ground, near a large pile of rocks. Contrary to what they feared, there were no injuries on the bodies of the two men. They had not been beaten. There were no signs of struggle, only a strange tranquility, as if they were sleeping. However, the strangest thing was the presence of two lead masks. These masks were placed exactly on each of their faces, each mask made of thick metal, likely lead, but there were no signs of damage or breakage. This was completely unlike what people would expect from a normal protective mask. Right next to their bodies, the discoverer found a piece of paper. On the paper were a series of strange characters, symbols that no one could understand. This piece of paper was not part of a personal note or a typical message. It looked like a code or a message from another world, as if these men had been preparing for something that we cannot explain. Had they participated in some kind of ritual? A natural question arose in the minds of those present at the time. Investigators began to grapple with theories. Some believed the masks and the paper might be part of an ancient ritual, while others suspected it was an experiment the men had inadvertently participated in, leading to this tragic end. But one thing was certain: this was no ordinary accident. The strange details, from the lead masks to the mysterious paper, raised a huge question mark in the minds of all those involved in the investigation. As news of Manuel and Miguel's death spread, theories began to appear like mushrooms after rain. The case became a hot topic of conversation in the community. People began asking, what really happened on top of Vintem Hill? Investigators began working with the hope of finding a clue that could clarify the situation. However, despite their efforts, nothing was clear. The lead masks remained a big question. How did the two men decide to wear such masks? What did they know that we can't understand? And why lead masks, a material not only heavy, but also seemingly unnecessary for a normal trip? One initial theory that investigators proposed was that the two men might have been involved in a mysterious ritual. People in the community where they lived began sharing stories about ancient rituals involving masks and spiritual beliefs. Some said that, in the past, lead masks were used in ceremonies to protect against invisible forces or dangers from the cosmos. However, no one could explain why these men wore such masks on what seemed like a normal expedition. Furthermore, the strange characters on the paper made people think. Some cryptographers studied the paper, but they couldn't decipher what it contained. Could this be an ancient code used in a spiritual ritual? Or could it be part of a series of events that none of us can explain? The deaths of Miguel and Manuel seemed not to be a normal accident, but part of a larger story, something we cannot know. Another theory proposed that the two men may have been caught up in a secret scientific experiment. Some people began linking their deaths to experiments that had been conducted in the area in previous years. These experiments related to studies on the paranormal or even high-tech trials, could be the reason why Miguel and Manuel met such a tragic end. However, no documents or evidence confirmed this theory, which only made people more confused and skeptical about this coincidence. With no clear signs of the cause of death, investigators could not rule out the possibility of a kidnapping and murder. Some speculated that the two men might have been kidnapped by a criminal group or a secret organization who used the masks and paper as part of a ritual before killing them. However, there were no clear signs of a third party being involved in their deaths. Both bodies had no wounds or signs of struggle, which made this theory difficult to believe. The silence of the two men before they died only added to the mystery. No one knows what they really found on top of Vintem Hill. Could they have discovered something they couldn't share? Something beyond human understanding. Whatever the case, the strangeness and mystery of this case continue to haunt the investigators and those seeking the truth. While theories have been put forward, no theory truly explains the entire case. The lead masks, the strange paper, and the mysterious deaths of Miguel and Manuel remain a huge question mark, unanswered. As the investigation became increasingly complex, the authorities began searching for other clues beyond the lead masks and the strange paper. While theories about spiritual rituals and scientific experiments were proposed, there was still no clear evidence to support any of the theories. However, what surprised everyone was an important discovery on the third day of the investigation. When the investigation team continued to explore the Vintem Hill area, they accidentally discovered an ancient tomb buried under piles of rocks fallen from the cliff. Beneath the soil, archaeologists found a human skeleton. But the strange thing was that this skeleton was associated with lead masks similar to those Manuel and Miguel had worn. It turned out that the skeleton belonged to someone from the 18th century, an explorer, or even a scientist from that era. These lead masks had been used in ancient rituals, part of a tradition that had disappeared long ago. Finding this skeleton raised a big question. Could Manuel and Miguel have accidentally discovered an ancient site, a place connected to rituals that modern humans had long forgotten? This discovery gave the investigation more depth, opening up a possibility that no one had considered before. Perhaps the two men had intruded on a sacred site, a place from which they couldn't leave without paying the price. A part of a story, possibly forgotten for centuries, could now be the key to unraveling their deaths. Archaeologists began to hypothesize that Manuel and Miguel's case was not simply an accident, but could be the consequence of breaking an ancient taboo, a revenge. The investigation ultimately did not bring a clear answer. Although the ancient tomb was discovered and linked to the lead masks, authorities could not confirm whether Manuel and Miguel had really uncovered an ancient ritual or if it was just the result of an unexpected accident. Evidence remained sparse, and theories grew increasingly vague. As a result, the case was closed without a definitive conclusion. However, the case of the lead masks continues to haunt those involved in the investigation and the community. Was it just an inexplicable accident? Or is there something deeper waiting for us to discover? Although no one can answer the final question, Manuel and Miguel will forever be linked to an unsolvable mystery, and their story will remain one of the strangest legends in history.